I'm Magic John with Bare Bottle Brewing Company, and today we're going to be talking about the fresh hop of Burnell, Strata Fresca. Fresh hop beers are really special beers in the hearts and minds of brewers across the globe. Once a year during hop harvest season, we get to use fresh hops as opposed to hops that have been processed and dried out in a way that we can use them throughout the year. They do taste very different. You get different characters, a lot more of the leafy character, a lot more moisture. Once a year we get to add them to our beers. Kind of like wine where you really never know what you're gonna get. We never know what we're gonna get from the hops. You'll hear a couple things out there, fresh hops and wet hops. I don't know if anyone is really very nitpicky about it, but they basically mean the same thing. This is our third year doing it with Strata, which has become our new favorite hop. Tried to get it on the earlier side this time to promote some more fruity flavors, but let's give it a try. It smells like grassy bubble gum. Really like berry, kind of tangy, zesty grapefruit. This kind of reminds me of like a melon grapefruit haichu. It's got these really cool tropical notes, but it's got that waxy chewiness that like a haichu or like a Starburst has. The entirety of the beer has this awesome just resin oil. Like imagine if you actually chewed on like a pine needle and then it just lingered on your palate. Super aromatic, super well-rounded beer. My goal with this beer this year was to kind of straddle the line between a hazy and a West Coast. I feel like when we've used the wet hops in the past, they've been the brightest when they've been in West Coast IPAs, but they've been really fruity and promote more of that juicy character in a hazy IPA, which I think a lot of people really like. So straddling that line, making sure there's a little bit of bite and bitterness to try to promote all those cool flavors. It is a 2-row base with a little bit of wheat, a little bit of rye. Best Red X to promote kind of a little bit more body and sweetness, give you a little bit of an old school West Coast vibe. We went higher in the gypsum to promote crispy body and the hops themselves. Gypsum is calcium sulfate, and sulfate tends to promote the dryness, bitterness of the beer. Calcium chloride is the other ions that we use to adjust our water, and the chloride promotes mouthfeel and fluffiness and juiciness. Traditionally, West Coast IPAs were high in sulfate, and New England or hazy IPAs are higher in chloride. Just look at water profiles of places across the country. Even though this is a hazy beer, a little bit of rye, a little bit of wheat, a little bit of that Red X, it doesn't actually taste big and fluffy, but you do have a lot of body to help hold on to the hops, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. This is a West Coast hazy through and through, and I think it's the perfect showcase for these hops. This is delicious, actually. This is the first one I've had since the tech. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna use this base again for another beer. Something we have learned when making these wet hop beers is that you can't only use the fresh hops. I just use fresh hops and wet hops in the same sentence.
They basically mean the same thing.
You can't only use the fresh hops. You also need to use other hop sources, whether it's hop extracts or T90 pellets or just dried flowers. Using them in conjunction helps build a much more complex and layered beer. Just the wet hops by themselves are kind of one-dimensional and you only get that one flavor, but it's a flavor you can't get any other way, so it's totally worth it to make these beers. The reason they call them wet, when you get the hops, they are kind of moist. The hops are really the flower of the plant, and they will go brown and start to die almost instantly, which is why nobody uses hops like this on a normal basis. We had these flown down and we put them in a beer less than 12 hours after they were picked, which is pretty expensive. But it's worth it once a year. It's kind of like Beaujolais Nouveau. It's a celebration of the beginning of hop season. Using fresh hops sounds romantic, and it really is. There's something really beautiful when you get the bags in. The entire room just reeks of this intoxicating aroma, and there's nothing like it. Breaking open the hops, rubbing them. These are the hops we're gonna use the rest of the year. Getting like a first glance of what they smell and taste like is incredible. It's a little more difficult. They're a lot bigger to use than regular T90 pellets. We can't just throw them in the tank and then, call it a day. It's to be very hands-on. We're throwing them in, taking them out, throwing them in, making sure we're purging the tank so we don't add any oxygen and just ruin this entire beautiful product we're making. It's for the love of the whole thing. Your schedule has to be wide open during a wet hop season. The hops are ready when they're ready, and we get them in when we get them in, and if we're here until 9, 10 p.m. because we gotta make sure the beer is doing its thing, we gotta do it. Just like Wine Harvest, which we also make wine, and we're dealing with that exact same thing right now. It's an agricultural product, and it's fun to just work with it every single year and then try it. And I can't get enough of this beer. This beer is incredible. Make sure you go out in the world right now. Everyone is making these wet hop beers. Go try as many as you can. It's a once-a-year celebration.
Fly, you fools!